Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Tai Nicolopoulos, VP of Marketing at Beewise. Thanks for being on the show today, Tai.
Thanks for having me, Greg. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let's jump into it.
Did you notice I already worked in a bee pun?
I didn't, but now I'm going to have to keep a note of that. I'm going to keep my ears perked. So look, I love to always start with our guests' background. And you've obviously had an extensive career and background in marketing across various industries. And now you're obviously with Beewise and the company's Revolutionizing agriculture. And we'll get into all of that for sure.
Yes.
But can you start by telling us a little bit about your journey and what led you to Beewise, kind of set the stage for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. To say that I've worked across a variety of industries is an understatement. My background's pretty eclectic. And in particular, prior to Beewise, I was working in capital formation platforms, so equity crowdfunding, alternative VC, essentially a lot of companies trying to democratize access to capital. And one of the things that exposed me to was how, traditional VCs, they need, 100x returns. They're looking for very sort of narrow model, a lot of B2B SaaS. And there can be really amazing companies with founders from non-traditional backgrounds with unique solutions. A lot of times things like hardware, they don't fit the traditional thesis, and it can be a little bit more challenging for them to get funding, but those can also be some of the most world-changing ideas. So I was really excited about continuing down that path on the capital side, finding another VC platform, doing something along those lines and doing my marketing work there. And then I got a phone call from a recruiter that was just weird. The first question's out of her mouth.
Those recruiters.
The first question out of her mouth was, "Are you afraid of bees? Are you afraid of bees? Are you allergic to bees?" I was like, what? What's this?
Yeah.
And then she explained a little bit of how Beewise is using AI and robotics to create essentially remote beekeeping, a remote beekeeper that can tend to all the needs of bees and help protect bees. And, in terms of climate tech opportunity and how this is something helping bees adapt to climate threats, and also addressing workforce automation issues that I'd seen in other robotics companies fundraising, where they had something that fixed skilled agricultural labor shortage issues.
Yeah.
And it sort of had a small business friendly approach to workforce automation. Just the opportunity became very clear and very exciting to me. And then when I met the co-founders of Beewise and saw how passionate they were and how bright and how committed they are to lean methodology and how sort of curious they were, it was a slam dunk for me, and I was hooked. And now I'm working in ag tech and working with bees.
Something I don't think you probably ever thought you'd be saying.
No.
For sure. So can you share some of the highlights from your career path and anything that's shaped your approach to marketing and leadership?
Yeah. So, I think there are two things that I was lucky enough to experience really early in my sort of adult and professional life. And, the first one was sort of social scientific methods. I actually started out, I was getting a master's degree in social psychology. I was very sure I wanted to keep going with that I was going to be a career academic. I was really curious about how environment and messaging can impact human behavior. And I thought I would do that in a lab. And I was very, very lucky to be doing this in Silicon Valley, where a lot of my professors had projects and partnerships with entrepreneurs. And I saw how broad an impact and how many different lines of inquiry you could engage in as an entrepreneur. And I caught the bug in the startup world and just never looked back. But I bring that approach of trying to have a question about human behavior and then operationalizing it and testing it and iterating to how I market. And I think about marketing as a behavioral science lab. And that's part
Interesting.
of why I've worked in so many different industries and across so many different marketing disciplines, because I'm pretty agnostic about them. It's all behavioral science, and I like to solve hard problems, and I try to be curious. And so if there's a smart team and a hard problem, it doesn't matter if it's in education tech or finance or automotive or ag. I've done it all. So for me, that's what gets me really excited. And I think the other thing around, you mentioned leadership, I want to touch on that as well. I'll make sure I answer your question completely. I also was lucky enough to work for an educational coaching company and to get coaching as a very early career manager and be able to connect my personal goals to how I worked and how I interacted with the people above me and below me. And that intentional approach to people is also something that has always inspired me. And I often feel that there's this underappreciation for the economic value of being able to engage and retain employees. And, I always think it is better to try to enable people to do their best work and play to their strengths and sort of want to stay engaged with a company, and that is something that, good managers can help to do.
I'm really glad you brought that up because it's always something that I try to touch on, hiring and engagement. I'm biased. I say it all the time. I'm in the recruiting world, and it's something that, because I've been internal, right? Part of the HR team, the HR function. And when you do all of that work to hire people, and the bar is usually very high, especially in these hard tech companies, something that's novel, innovative, etc. But you do all of that work to hire really great people. And then if you can't keep them, if you can't keep them engaged, if you can't keep them happy, if you can't keep them working for you, it's just such a waste of time. And the ripple effects of that can be detrimental to the company's success, as well as like the rest of your team morale and knowledge, etc. It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that and bringing it up. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in a little bit. But let's pivot to focus, purely on Beewise right now. So fascinating origin story. Can you walk us through how the company was founded and the core mission that drives the team? I know you touched on it already briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. So our co-founder, Elia Radzner, was working as a commercial beekeeper and was out in the fields pulling out a frame of bees from a wooden box, one after another, thousands of them, inspecting the bees, figuring out what actions needed to be taken and doing it. And had this sudden insight that I think a computer could do this better than me. He reached out to his network and he connected with amazing entrepreneurs like our CEO, Sar Safras, had successful exits to Microsoft and, was really able to sort of build to amazing technologists and sort of figured out, okay, we can put conventional cameras in hives and we can do remote inspection. We can physically look at a frame of bees just the way a beekeeper would, and we can use computer vision to see what's on there and make assessments. And that was sort of where the company started. But because they were getting market feedback, which is extremely important, they realized, wow, this is not actually solving the problems of beekeepers. They were all saying, that's great. The data's great, but, I can't go do anything about it. Apiaries can be hundreds of miles apart from each other. And
Really?
that
Wow.
means it's where you can get land, it's how much forage
Yeah.
the bees need. So you're spending half your day driving, which means that you're not getting to all your hives every day. You and your staff have a round robin where maybe you're getting there once every 3 weeks. And then in terms of being able to find expert beekeepers to be able to go out and make assessments in the field, there's an expertise gap. There's a skilled labor gap with beekeeping in particular, but in a lot of areas of ag, it's the same thing. And so the person looking at the colony of bees may not have the same insights that a master beekeeper would. So doing the inspection was really important, but it wasn't enough. So enter the robotics. Now imagine you have something essentially the size of a chest cooler where you can kind of open it up, and the robotic arm can pull out and grip a frame of bees, pick it up, put my hands in the screen so you can see, look at it, and then in addition to interpreting what's going on, take action. So, if it identifies that the bees need to be fed, it can remotely supplementally feed. If the hives are going to swarm, you can move the frames around to manage where the queens are. You can treat for pests and disease. You can move around where food and resources are in between frames, balance the hive. So now you have a holistic solution that deals with all those issues beekeepers are facing, and also addresses some of the big macro issues affecting bee health. I think we all know, or have heard, this is what I had heard before working for Beewise, that bees were in trouble. That they are sensitive to extreme fluctuations in weather. So climate change impacts their health negatively. There can also be bloom asynchrony, where the flowers that they might eat at a certain time of year might be knocked off by catastrophic weather, or might just come at the wrong time. There are also issues with thermoregulation and how active they are. There is also a variety of sort of pests and parasites that spread rapidly because of how they're brought to pollination around the country and the world. And so, improved ability to insulate the hives, protect them from extreme weather, and sort of treat for disease and pest was also incredibly important. And the ability to sort of both remotely inspect and treat allowed to have a sort of holistic solution to the complex problems facing bees.
That is very cool. So just to be clear though, none of this is autonomous, right? It's still human in the loop. Someone is on the other end actually monitoring and able to see what's going on. Or
So
does the technology like identify it ahead of time and alert someone to jump into the system?
yes, and there are extremely labor intensive and sort of frequently required processes that we have automated and can be done totally autonomously. There are also beekeepers we work with who want to retain a little more control and will inspect and then take action remotely. But there are activities that can be done autonomously.
Wow, that's cool. Well, you just think about the multiplier there. If you've got one master beekeeper, like you said, who isn't driving 400 miles a day,
Which
or something
there's climate
crazy,
impact there. There's improved carbon footprint there.
climate impact,
Yeah,
efficiency, there's
we
so many things.
estimate 90% reduction in beekeeping labor.
Crazy.
Which means that family owned beekeeping businesses that might otherwise be selling or struggling are able to expand and keep doing what they've been doing and improving outcomes for growers and for beekeepers.
Love that. So it's obviously a compelling and crucial mission. We can all agree, right? How does the technology align with the mission, and what kind of impact outside of the economical side of it? And like you just mentioned there, for smaller beekeepers, keeping it in the family, what maybe unforeseen impacts have you guys seen, or what feedback are you getting from your clients?
Yeah, so there's a few questions there. I'll sort of start with the alignment of business model and mission. And I think this is really critical and is what allows us to do what we do. We do well by doing good, by improving the economics of beekeeping, in terms of the labor and also reducing colony loss. Our devices reduce colony loss by 80%, by the way.
Wow.
So,
Wow, that's a
that
big number.
improves the sort of economics and the feasibility of beekeeping.
Mhm.
And today we monetize that primarily by offering commercial pollination to growers. We are all over the continental United States. And, if you're not in ag, you may not know this, but 75% of the crops that we eat are pollinated by honeybees.
Really?
Yes. So the bee crisis is really one about global food security.
Yeah.
That's the piece that people maybe don't necessarily know why it's so important to save the bees. They're really important for biodiversity, and in terms of Apis mellifera, so honeybees, our health and the economic viability of farming is, our fate is entwined with the fate of bees.
Wow. Yeah, one of the questions I wanted to ask you just from my own personal curiosity, because again, everyone hears about the problem and, saving the bees, etc., but what the bigger picture is. And can you tell me what is impacting the bee numbers? Like, is it just climate? Is it not having enough people looking after and tending to their environment? Like, what is actually impacting the numbers?
It's a multitude of factors: climate, disease, pesticide exposure, a million factors.
Got it.
Which is why one intervention is in our opinion not the solution. There needs to be a holistic just change to the practice of beekeeping. And
Yeah.
I want to also go back and thread the needle about the business model and sort of the unexpected benefits. What we've
Okay.
realized by offering commercial pollination is that we are solving a need for growers in terms of improving crop yields and being able to give them transparency into what's happening with pollination each season, and that we've been able to fill a need for reliable pollination and sort of more control over the process with growers. And that being able to offer pollination as a service and to have a service model business rather than trying to sell devices to beekeepers, is better not just for growers but also stabilizes commercial pollination prices for the whole beekeeping market. And because we are a technology partner, not a beekeeper, we're not competing with beekeepers for business, and
Yeah.
we're able to give them more money up front and guarantee them fair market prices for their hives. So in terms of the economic piece and sort of our ability to back to the sort of piece about what investors are looking for to be a service business, that we were able to do that. I think that was sort of not the very first iteration of the company, but it's where we found tremendous product market fit, which is, again, when I back to that recruiter call, part of what was so exciting for me as a marketer is to know that was there, to see that they had done so much growth really before building out marketing,
Yeah.
then to come in and be able to just do really impactful storytelling and reach new audiences and not worry if there's sort of false negatives because of product issues, because there's definitely demand for the product. So it's so exciting and fun for me in terms of where I get to spend my time.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so educational as well. It's something that regardless of what industry you're in or what your background is, what you're focused on personally, career-wise, it's something everyone can relate to. It's really, you're able to humanize the technology, the impact you're having, the team, like you said, storytelling, everything like that. And anyone in the world could see like how that can impact them personally and the world. So that's really cool. Um, how, I don't know, do you have measurable, like a measurable impact on numbers of how Beewise has had an impact on like the bee population or anything like that? Or
So
is that something you
we
can?
estimate that last year, in the course of our commercial pollination activities, and we're now bringing bees for honey production and sort of doing the full annual cycle of migratory commercial beekeeping, we saved over 22 million bees.
Wow.
And, as we were able to produce more devices and scale, I think we're going to be able to just continue to increase that impact at scale.
And you said you're all over North America. Is it that the market that you primarily
the continental
operate?
United States? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, even if we're not just in California, but if you look at, where our food is produced, so much is happening. I'm here in the Bay Area, but it's important to us to always spend time in the Central Valley and to really connect with beekeepers and growers and understand what's happening, because they're vital to our food systems.
Love that. Thank you for the work that you guys are doing, but also sharing all of this is really cool. I didn't expect to learn so much as well, but also have my eyes open to it. So it's great. Let's talk about your role. You again touched on it, how cool it is to come in and do the storytelling and everything like that. And normally marketing in such a tech-driven solution or industry that's traditional, like ag tech or agriculture in general, not ag tech, that's a bit more forward. But it obviously comes with challenges. And I'm curious about a few things: who you're marketing to, what your strategies are, what you found most effective, and where you want to be spending your time, like where you're getting the value. I know I'm asking multiple questions all the time, but they're all around the same topic.
Well, when you do marketing strategy, it's important to be able to tease out those sort of tangled ideas.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that for me is exciting about this role is it's not as digital an industry. We're bringing advanced AI and robotics to a field where, there's a lot of meetings and a lot of persuasion done in person. And, it means that you have to really do good, solid product marketing and communications and really, really understand your user. And you can't be lazy or conflate your strategy and your channel. I've worked so many places where it's just like, okay, well, what's going on with your search engine marketing budget? And, there's this SEO playbook and what are you doing in these sort of very sort of specific functional channels? That is not where I'm focused. That doesn't mean that it's not important to really do good attribution and good marketing science. But, you need to understand this complex ecosystem where growers have really sometimes intergenerational relationships with beekeepers, and beekeepers are, have understandable concerns about new tech. Does it work? How does this impact my business? Can we trust you? At the end of the day, we have nothing but our good name in this industry. And it's really about being able to have strong relationships with trusted leaders in beekeeping, in bee health organizations. For us, I want to reach growers and explain why this fits with their workflows and will improve their crop yields, but that's not sufficient. It's also really important to be part of the conversation with beekeepers and bee scientists. And, something I'm working on, is peer-reviewed research partnerships, where we're hands off and, the data is what it is. And also just listening to beekeepers and understanding what their needs are. And the thing about our ability, even as a hardware company, to be lean and to rapidly iterate is if we get feedback from beekeepers, we can make changes. And that's been very important to us. And I think, they're not always, in the weeds with lean product development. So when we talk to them about our product roadmap and how we develop new features and how we've made changes based on things that, they told us at the last, trade show, year or two ago, I think they start to understand and see in a really visible way what we're doing and how we will continue to work with them. So having those conversations and getting people out in the field, seeing the device full of bees, and so a lot of face-to-face, a lot of word of mouth, a lot of research, but also visual storytelling, to be able to use owned and earned channels to really have a broader audience see what we're doing. That's super powerful.
That's amazing. Thanks. And well, I guess I wanted to ask this, but with everything that you've shared, I guess it answers itself. But I'm still curious if you ever see any of this, because there's obviously skepticism, or usually in the broader sense with tech interventions in nature, right? Some people are like, oh, there's natural processes, there's things that, or natural selection, or whatever it may be. But we're
Yeah.
seeing with what you shared already about the impact that global warming, pesticides, things like that are having on the bees. You're trying to protect them. But do you ever get any pushback? Do you ever hear any of that stuff from the market or people or naysayers?
Yeah. So depending on who the audience is, there's different concerns, and they're very legitimate concerns and the ones that we take seriously. There's I think you'll see this across every industry. There's anxiety about artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
Either, okay, how can this beekeeping tech possibly work? It doesn't work. Or there's the concerns that it works too well, right? Like, what is this going to do to my family business, to my industry, to how we're working together? We really want to make clear that beekeepers can still have control over what's happening in hives, that, this is a tool for them. We are not beekeepers, they're partners with technology, and this is something that needs to happen,
yeah,
to address the threats to bees at scale. And it has to be automated. So that's one discussion. And then, as we talk to the buyers of the crops that we help to produce, there are a lot of discussions these days about regenerative agriculture, about how bee-friendly pollinated crops are. And, those teams, have done a lot of reading about wild bees and about the importance of wild bees for biodiversity, and what monoculture or even managed bees with certain diseases or parasites can do to wild bee populations. And there's a sense of, well, why do we need the managed bees? Why isn't this just a solution for wild bees? And we've done pilots with our devices using wild bees. It is tech. It is not exclusive to honeybees, but it comes back to the food systems question of, we are incredibly, our top 200 to 300 most consumed crops, a vast majority of them require honeybee population to be able to produce food at scale. There are some really awesome uses of blue carpenter bees or honey or bumblebees, excuse me, to pollinate berries, and it's really, really exciting. And growers who do this cannot find enough of them and can't necessarily do it at the scale to feed the world. And I think as we see bee populations suffer, we'll start to see impact on nutrition, health outcomes, for the most vulnerable people who can't necessarily afford foods that are not conventionally produced.
yeah,
So this is also like an equity and sort of health and food justice question for us. So I will advocate all day for protecting the health of commercially managed honeybees, and we want to see increases in wild bee populations, and we think these things are completely compatible.
definitely. Question, is the issue that we're dealing with bee population unique to the US? I know we always talk
No.
about it as a global problem, but it is really everywhere is seeing the same issues because of the temperature changes and the use of pesticides and all these other issues.
Yeah, and we were in Australia recently talking to sort of regional governments and researchers who had originally there's a really nasty mite called Varroa destructor. It has like a very metal name because it does something very nasty.
Okay.
Imagine something the size of a soccer ball just attached to your liver, just feeding off your nutrients and exposing you and making you vulnerable to a lot of diseases. Uh,
Mhm.
Most bee colonies have this mite called Varroa destructor. Now, in Australia, they didn't have it for a long time. They had biosecurity measures in place. So they thought they were immune to this. They worked hard to protect themselves from this, but there's Varroa in Australia now. These problems are coming. Climate problems are coming. We are focused on the U.S. just because of the size of the market, but this is a global problem, and we will. Where we expand and how is beyond my pay grade. I don't know exactly what's ahead there, but the problem is completely global.
It sounds like you're busy enough at the moment, so big enough market here.
Never too busy, never too busy.
There is that. So we touched on it earlier about hiring and retaining talent. Obviously, building a team in such a specialized field comes with its own challenges. I know personally from helping clients like this hire, but obviously when you're doing it yourself, same sort of thing. How does the company approach hiring the right talent, especially with a company that's so mission driven like Beewise?
So we definitely hire for passion for the mission. Now, not everybody goes into their first conversation with Beewise incredibly informed about bees. I know that certainly was not the case for me, but I think the concern for the environment and for food justice are things that we see across our employees, and that might look different ways for different people, but they connect to the cause. They're choosing to be here because they like what we're doing. And I think there's also just some real classic good hiring and talent engagement going on as well. We have our founders on a panel interview as the final stage in our hiring process for everyone in the company. We still do that. We're really looking for curiosity. We're also a place that celebrates mistakes, and you want people to be able to be very, very honest. We don't just ask about one mistake in interviews. We ask, about multiple. You really want to see that people have thought carefully about that and can kind of grow and learn and adapt from those kinds of experiences. And we're also here in the Bay Area. We are an office company. We're flexible, and we understand that people have other obligations and life, but we try to be together. It's something that it's, I think, self-selects for people who are really want to engage with the mission and sort of get meaning at work. Although it can definitely eliminate some candidates.
Yeah.
For me, I've started to really appreciate being in the office again. I've never ramped up on a product faster than at Beewise, and I think that's because I was just sitting with the founders. I was out in the field with growers and beekeepers. I was with the bees getting stung. It's
Really?
it's hard to replicate that. It gives you a lot of empathy for the user.
I think that's super important, especially when you're doing something like ag tech, food. I used to work at a company called Sweetgreen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was director of talent there, but obviously I was part of corporate, and that was what my team all did. But regardless of who you are, whether you're a director, C-level, or individual contributor, your first week was spent in the restaurant. You went and did the same training that everyone, because the majority of the employees are restaurant employees, right? That's the bread and butter. So you had to spend a week out in the field to understand what everyone that you are doing your corporate job for is doing, and have empathy for that, have an understanding for that, build those relationships. And it's hard to do it when you're too removed.
Yes.
So I think it's so important, the in-person element as well. I'm a big believer in that, even in this remote first world, but also being on the ground, like understanding what you're doing and how it's impacting an industry is crucial.
Yeah.
For sure. And all of that kind of ties into the culture as well, because I wanted to ask about that for Beewise, but it sounds like everything that you're doing helps shape it as well, the in-person element, the mission, the drive, and all of that stuff. And then I'm sure those tie into the values of the company as well. How is there like a real thought out way or strategy about keeping people aligned or having people aligned to the mission and values of the company, or is it like a natural selection, for want of a better phrase?
I think we're pretty transparent as a company. We talk through problems We share, detailed updates with employees, and we encourage people to be out in the fields with regularity. And that connects people to the challenges that our customers face. People understand what the business priorities are at a very high level, even if in detail there's growth stage pivoting happening.
Yeah,
And I think we also are lucky to have founders who are inspiring leaders and really passionate about what they're doing, and they walk the walk in terms of bee health and commitment to making sure everything we're doing is mission aligned.
that's great. So let's talk about the future now. What's next for Beewise? Are there any upcoming projects or innovations that you're particularly excited about, or anything that you can share with us that isn't public right now?
Yeah, so there's a few exciting things in the works. I think on the marketing side in particular, we are working on a go to market for a corporate beekeeping service where now institutions and property owners and companies can have bee homes on campus.
Wow,
So, not just to have the green roof and the lead points, but also to have something where they can really measure how many bees they're saving in their devices. There's transparency. Employees can see, down to the larva level, frame by frame, in our dashboards, what's happening in the hives. Um, you know, have educators available to do programming and education around beekeeping and the importance of pollinators. And it's tech enabled, it's data driven, which fits in with the way that a lot of companies work. And they'll be able to have bees on campus in a way where there's a lot of transparency and a big STEM component.
that's very cool. Is there
So,
any risk associated to that? I know you mentioned being out in the field and getting stung. Like if you have that close by, and
oh, I
there's
really had it coming. The amount of bees that we put in hives, like, in the middle of like a corporate campus, like we have bees here at our corporate campus, and there's a few hives. We've done a site assessment.
Mhm.
We have educational signage. They're placed where people aren't going to get closer than about 30 feet. And they've got beautiful, we're here at Bishop Branch in San Ramon, which is a beautiful green building. And, they've already got amazing pollinator gardens. So we were attracting bees even before we brought in our hive. So, I think it's no different. And, our bees are quite docile and, well, there's minimal risk.
Love that.
And, I think companies are sort of coming around to a pro bee stance is they're understanding how minimal the risks actually are for having bees on campus. So, we're working with some pilot customers on sort of the specifics of how these programs work. Excited to be able to share that with companies who might not otherwise be able to sort of get as much ESG data or engagement out of bee programs. And then, the thing that, like, I've been with Beewise for 2 years now. Peer-reviewed research can just be a long endeavor. So, I'm excited in the next year to just start to see the fruits of some of our research partnerships and, some real peer-reviewed looks at the efficacy of our solutions in terms of bee activity and impact on pests. So, I'm very excited to sort of be able to continue the journey with some of these sort of deep industry and academic partnerships and expand who can access our devices.
That's great. Yeah, it's such a great option for the corporate world. I could see it being such a great thing for, like, I don't know how much space they'd have, but schools, but also like master plan communities that are trying to be more green, or that have like little farms or growing sections for like kids
I
in the
agree completely. You heard it here first.
educational opportunity for parents as well. I mean, like I said, I'm learning a ton in this conversation, but you could just think about embedding that, because people are like, oh, scared of bees, or like, think of them as pests or whatever, but how important they are for our lives. It's a great opportunity, and then they normally have the space as well. So yeah. Well, look, finally, before we wrap, I always like to ask our guests if they have any advice. Is there anything that you would give to any advice that you would give to other marketers, marketing leaders in the tech industry who are trying to make an impact and really put their stamp on their career path?
Yeah, I think for marketers who want to work for sustainable companies and do meaningful impact programming, I have it really lucky. I work for I have a company where what we're doing is inherently mission aligned. We do well by doing good. Now there are companies where that is not necessarily always as straightforward. But you as a marketer, if you are doing your best and highest, you are part of a flywheel between sales, between product, between strategy, where you are interacting with customers and you're the voice of the customer. And you can really help shape strategy and move things in the right direction, and build out programs where impact is aligned with profitability, and to focus on new interventions and new programs that serve your customer really, really well, rather than necessarily spending the resources or the time on reporting or
Yeah.
optics. So as part of a strategy team, as part of that flywheel, you can make real changes that are data informed and serve your users.
That's great advice. Thank you. Well, look, Tai, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, sharing about the company, and giving us a glimpse into the incredible work that's happening over at Beewise. Where can our listeners find you, find out more about Beewise, and follow along with the journey?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure for me as well. And anyone who's interested in learning more can visit us at Beewise. That's BEEWISE.ag. So like agriculture.ag. So that's beewise.ag. You can learn more about our impact and our offerings for growers and beekeepers.
Perfect. We will link that in the show notes as well for ease. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys expand and grow, and hopefully supporting in some way. But thank you again. This has been super informative. I'm sure our listeners are going to get a ton of insights and information from this. And yeah, I'm excited for it to be released.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me, Greg.
It's my pleasure.